A young girl was sitting on a tree stump at the edge of a river when she noticed a magical tree growing in the water. This young girl was a mischievous pig. She had a brother called George Pig and parents called Mummy and Daddy Pig. It was the day Peppa Pig went to go meet her family again but was wondering if they would accept her. But Daddy and Mummy Pig was very vicious in the past but always accepted George because he was a boy. Peppa didn't know how to feel. She was somewhat scared because in the past Daddy Pig used to abuse her. As the hours passed, Peppa began to be more and more worried to see if they would accept her. It was seconds before she saw her family again but wasn't confident to even knock on the door, so she came back the next day at same time. This time she had the courage to knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. She waited and waited, but as soon as she was about to leave, she hears the door opening as she turns her back. Within seconds Mummy Pig grabs Peppa, takes her to the basement and straps her to the pole. Peppa was scared. She couldn't see anything. It was pitch black and she saw a teddy dinosaur. She reached to grab it. It was one of George's old toys he had as a kid. Peppa shouted, "Help! Help! Help!" but got no response. She carried on shouting, "George helps me, I miss you." Within seconds George was there, excited but was confused why Peppa was strapped to Mummy Pig's stripping pole. Peppa shouted, "Oh George, do you like what you see?" "Obviously," he said. "Yes, Peppa." George then bends down onto his knees and unties Peppa from Mummy Pig's pole. With excitement, George takes Peppa to his room and starts making out. Peppa was delighted to see George but was confused why he was acting all flirty with Peppa. Later that night George had to hide Peppa away from Mummy Pig because he knew that she would lock her up again. Although Mummy Pig came in with one serving of fufu, George shared it with Peppa so she could eat that night. When George took a bite out of the fufu and threw it on the floor because he was having a spaz attack, Peppa sat there and said, "Fat L." Nobody heard George when he fell on the floor. So she dragged him into the closet, and pulled his trousers down, and started to give him a hand job. 5 minutes later she started to lick his dick from top to bottom as she was staring through the cracks to make sure Daddy and Mummy didn't come to the door. After George had his spaz attack, Peppa and George started and have anal sex at 50 meters per hour. George was feeling like he was with the fairies and deises. He felt so good, but after Peppa was finished with George, George wanted to carry on with Peppa. So he strapped her up and forcefully sucked his dick in her mouth inch by inch very slowly. Peppa began to choke. It's that big. He wanted to go deeper and deeper but reached her lungs. When George was pulling his dick out of Peppa's mouth, Peppa screamed, "Mummy Pig, come and fucking help me, I am being raped." Mummy Pig ran upstairs and watched Peppa be raped by George as the laughter fell out of Mummy and Daddy's mouth. They couldn't stop. It was so funny. They loved seeing Peppa being raped by George because she hated her.